A landlord's house was destroyed after not being able to evict a tenant. Okay, these eviction moratoriums, they're causing all sorts of problems. And these eviction moratoriums have allowed tenants to just go ahead and do whatever they want in a property, knowing that they're not going to be able to get evicted. They're not paying rent, they're tearing properties apart, and landlords are left to clean up the mess, and they have to pay all the bills. And it's just not right. I've been saying that for quite a while. It's just not right. So this article comes to us from Connecticut, and it's just a sad story. I mean, there's nothing else to say, but it's a sad story. But let's get into it. The pandemic turned many lives upside down, particularly for those who have lost jobs. Governor Ned Lamont approved an eviction moratorium that postpones evictions for those who cannot pay their rent. However, a landlord in Bristol said many people are taking advantage of the system. And the problem is that a lot of people are going to take advantage of the system. I mean, they left the door wide open for those people who are not honest to just take advantage, stay in a property that they can't afford or that they don't want to pay for anymore for as long as possible. And since this eviction moratorium has already lasted more than a year, it's just a year worth of free rent. They'll get their stimulus check, they'll get their unemployment, and they still won't use that money to pay the landlord what the landlord is owed. They don't care if eventually the eviction moratorium ends and then they have to move on to a different place. At least they got to stay somewhere for free for more than a year. Dave Haberfeld said he tried to evict a tenant well before COVID started, but it was halted because of the executive order. Now he's dealing with a destroyed apartment. The Pine Street apartment used to be freshly painted, have clean appliances, and a newer looking bathroom. It no longer looks like that. And fortunately, this article put in a few pictures of this place in there, and wow, it looks pretty bad, just completely torn apart. I'm going to put them up right now just so that you can see them. But, the honest truth is that I've seen it before. I've seen places that were torn up by bad tenants. I've had to evict bad tenants before. And fortunately, at the time, the eviction system and the court process was still in place so that I could get rid of those tenants. But in the case of a lot of landlords, it's just not an option anymore, especially in these tenant-friendly states. Just generally made a mess and made sure to ruin the carpets and leave behind plenty of garbage for us, Haberfeld said. That's not the worst of it. Red paint with rice was thrown on the walls. The windows were broken, profanities were spray painted, and trash was thrown everywhere. Haberfeld, who owns 36 properties, said he hasn't seen this kind of damage ever. And honestly, even my place wasn't that bad, They left the place a mess, but rice thrown on the wall, profanities spray painted, that's crazy. I've had some vandalism before, but this was the worst one. The new high scorer, Haberfeld said. He said he had been trying to evict the tenant since before the pandemic. We filed an eviction 2 months before the virus came. The eviction process takes 90 days around here. When the virus came, we had to stop and we could no longer evict, Haberfeld said. And that's part of the problem right there. Before any of this moratorium or anything else was going on, Connecticut already is a tenant-friendly state, and they had a process where it takes 90 days to get rid of a bad tenant. That's completely ridiculous. 90 days, 3 months of them not being able to collect their rent, even before the moratorium. When this moratorium ends, they might have to start the whole process over again. So let's say it ends on June 30th, what it was extended to. So even if they applied at June 30th, it would be all of July, all of August, and all of September before they'd be able to get that tenant out of there if they filed eviction the day that the courts were opened back up. The order postponed evictions for those who cannot pay their rent. While it ends on Wednesday, Lamont's office says it will remain in effect for Connecticut for the duration of the public health and civil preparedness emergency. Haberfeld believes if this eviction went through in the first place, he wouldn't be in the mess he now has to clean up. This eviction is going to cost me $22,000 to $24,000 by the time it's done, including this damage, Haberfeld said. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. It is not cheap to do a whole lot of repairs on houses, okay? Your little security deposits are just barely covering the basics if a tenant is a relatively decent tenant, okay? $24,000 worth of damage in this man's house, and there's no recovering most of that money. Oh man. He said the tenant lived for free for 14 months, and the order has only made it worse for landlords and others who pay their rent on time. Who's going to pick up the tab? Tenants will. I pay it. I have to raise rents to cover the 8 to 9 tenants who aren't paying and this kind of damage, Haberfeld said. And that's the main thing right there, okay? It's not like this is a no, we're just going to lose out as landlords. No, we're going to raise rents on all tenants from now on. We're going to increase our requirements. We're going to make it a lot harder for these bad tenants to rent anywhere. And if that pushes them into homelessness, so who cares? They're bad tenants, and I don't want them in my property. Their homelessness is their problem, not mine, and I'm not going to deal with it.